arrogant girl. Yelled at the school janitor until he called her by her childhood nickname, "Do you even know who my father is?" Emily's voice sliced through the empty school hallway like a knife. The words hit the walls, bounced back, and filled the silence with arrogance and fire. The janitor froze. His mop hung mid-air, dripping dirty water onto the white tiles. A drop fell. Then another. He looked up, slowly. His eyes quiet, his face lined with years of work nobody ever thanked him for. Emily stood tall, her glossy hair shining under the fluorescent lights, her designer bag hanging off her shoulder like a badge of power. She wasn't used to being ignored, especially not by a janitor. "I asked you something," she snapped, her voice louder this time. "You just spilled water on me, on my new shoes. These cost more than your paycheck." Her friends laughed behind her. Their laughter was mean, like the sound of glass breaking. The janitor said nothing. He just wiped the floor again, slower this time. Calm, careful, almost like he didn't hear her. That silence made Emily furious. She stepped closer, her anger turning her voice sharp. "I'm talking to you," she shouted. "Are you deaf or just too old to care?" For a second, just a second, his eyes lifted. There was something in them. Not anger, not fear. Something deeper. Something that made her heart skip. He spoke softly. "I'm sorry, miss. It won't happen again." That calm tone, respectful, tired, somehow made her feel smaller. But she couldn't stop herself. "It better not," she hissed, brushing past him. "Next time, watch where you're cleaning." Her friends followed, laughing again. The sound faded with their footsteps. For a moment it was just the janitor, the bucket, and the faint echo of water sliding down the tiles. Then, just as she reached the end of the hallway, he said something, quietly, gently. "Still losing your temper, Emmylou?" Her body froze. The nickname, that nickname. Her stomach dropped. She turned slowly, eyes wide. "What? Did you just call me?" The old man didn't move. His face was unreadable, but his eyes, they were full of memory. He whispered again, the words floating through the still air. "Emmylou, you used to chase butterflies behind the old library." The world stopped. The hallway blurred. The noise in her head went silent, because no one had called her that name since she was 8 years old. Emily stood frozen in the middle of the hallway, her breath caught between disbelief and confusion. Emmylou! That name didn't belong here, not in this polished school, not in this expensive uniform, not in this version of her. That name was from another life, a smaller house, a simpler time, a world she'd buried long ago. She turned around, her voice trembling but still trying to sound strong. How do you know that name?" The janitor looked up. His face was calm, but his eyes, they weren't just eyes. They were mirrors. They saw something she didn't want anyone to see. He smiled faintly. "Because I used to call you that. A long time ago." Emily blinked. Her heart pounded. "That's impossible," she whispered. I don't even know you." He just nodded as if he expected that answer. "You don't remember, do you?" he said softly, wiping the floor again. "You were only a little girl." The mop glided across the floor, slow and steady. Each stroke felt like it was brushing away years of her forgetting. The silence between them grew heavy, filled with something unspoken. Her friends were long gone now, and the hallway felt colder. She looked at the janitor again. His hands, calloused, worn, moved the mop like it was second nature. There was something about his voice, something familiar, deep down in her chest. She tried to shake it off. "You're mistaken," she said, forcing a laugh that didn't sound real. "I think you've got me mixed up with someone else." But as she spoke, her eyes caught a tiny scar just above his left eyebrow, a thin white line. It was small, but it hit her like lightning. Her mind flashed. A dirt road. A bike crash, a man lifting her up, his hands shaking as he whispered, "You're okay. Emmylou, you're safe." Her throat went dry. "No," she whispered. "That can't be." The janitor looked up again, this time meeting her eyes straight on. "You used to give me dandelions," he said quietly. Every morning before class. You said they were lucky. Her heart twisted. Memories she'd locked away for years began to flood back. A small yellow house, her mother's laughter, and a kind neighbor who fixed their fence when her father was away. That man, that same scar, that same gentle voice, She started, her voice trembling. Mr. Harris. From Maple Street. He nodded slowly, his eyes glistening just a little. You remembered. Her lips parted, but no words came out. For the first time that day, the confident, arrogant Emily, the girl who always had something to say, stood silent. The world around her blurred, the sound of her own heartbeat filling her ears. She felt small again, vulnerable, human. He picked up the mop bucket and said quietly, You grew up. Emmy Lou. But not all growth is good if it makes you forget who you were. Then he turned and started walking away, his footsteps soft, steady, fading into the echoing halls. Emily stood there, still frozen, the echo of his words sinking deeper than any insult ever could. For the first time in a long while, she didn't feel powerful. She felt ashamed. Emily couldn't focus the rest of the day. The classrooms, the chatter, even her best friend whispering jokes beside her, it all sounded like static. Her mind kept going back to that moment in the hallway, that voice, that name. Still losing your temper, Emmy Lou? It echoed in her head, looping over and over until it hurt. When the final bell rang, she walked out slowly, her usual confidence gone. She wasn't strutting anymore. Her shoulders felt heavy, her steps unsure. The sky outside was painted orange and pink, but she barely noticed. She just needed air and answers. Her car waited in the parking lot, but instead of leaving, she turned back toward the old building. She didn't even know why. Something inside her pulled her toward the janitor's room, tucked behind the gym, a place students rarely noticed. As she walked down the empty corridor, she could hear the faint sound of humming, a low, gentle tune, the kind her mom used to hum while cooking dinner. Her throat tightened. She followed it until she reached the small door marked Maintenance. Through the half-open door, she saw him, Mr. Harris, sitting on a small wooden chair, mending a torn basketball net. His glasses were low on his nose, and the same calm look rested on his face. Around him were small signs of a life lived quietly, a framed photo of a dog, an old coffee mug that said, Mark 1 Dad, and a faded picture of a little girl holding flowers. Emily's eyes locked on that photo. Her heart stopped. It was her, a younger version, maybe 6 years old, holding a bunch of dandelions and smiling with 2 missing front teeth. Standing right next to her in that photo was him, a younger Mr. Harris. She stepped inside without thinking. The floor creaked. He looked up. I was wondering if you'd come, he said softly. Emily froze, words catching in her throat. That picture? She whispered. Where did you get it? He smiled faintly, eyes soft. Your mother gave it to me. Said I should keep it. Said one day you might need reminding of who you were. Tears pricked her eyes, unexpected and burning. She hadn't thought about her mother in years. Not since she passed away. The memory hit her like a wave. Her mom's laughter, her warm hugs, the smell of fresh cookies, and this man, this kind neighbor, who helped them when her dad left, who watched over her like family. You helped us, she said slowly, her voice trembling. When everything fell apart, he nodded. Everyone needs someone when life gets heavy. You were just a little girl who loved dandelions. You said they made sad people smile. She swallowed hard, her throat tight. Why didn't you tell me who you were when you saw me? He sighed, setting the net aside. You wouldn't have remembered, Emmy Lou, and maybe I wanted you to see who you'd become before I reminded you who you were. The words cut deep, sharper than any scolding could. Because she knew he was right. Somewhere between wealth and pride, she'd lost the girl who used to hand him flowers just to brighten his day. Tears spilled over, but she quickly wiped them away. I'm sorry, she said, her voice small, breaking. I didn't mean what I said earlier. He interrupted gently. I know. Life teaches us to shout before it teaches us to listen. That line hit her harder than any punishment ever could. She looked down, unable to meet his gaze, and for the first time in years, Emily, the girl who thought she had everything, felt completely, painfully human. That night, Emily couldn't sleep. She lay in her bed staring at the ceiling, her mind replaying every word he said. "You wouldn't have remembered, Emmylou, and maybe I wanted you to see who you'd become before I reminded you who you were." Those words clung to her like shadows. She turned on her side, pulling the blanket close, but it didn't bring comfort. Not this time. Her room was full of everything she'd once bragged about. Brand new clothes, expensive perfume, glowing screens, but it all felt empty now. Useless. In the darkness, she saw flashes of that day years ago. The little house on Maple Street. Her mother baking cookies, and Mr. Harris helping fix the broken fence out back. He'd show up after long days at his own job, never asking for anything in return. Just helping because he cared. She remembered handing him dandelions, telling him, "For good luck." And he'd smile, that same warm smile, and say, "Luck follows kind hearts, Emmylou." Tears filled her eyes. Somewhere along the way, she had stopped being kind. The next morning, she arrived at school earlier than usual. The halls were empty, sunlight spilling across the polished floors. She walked quietly toward the maintenance room, clutching a small paper bag. Inside it, a sandwich, an apple, and a cup of coffee. She had no idea what to say, but she knew she had to start somewhere. She found him already sweeping near the gym, whistling that same old tune. His back was bent, his movements steady. The quiet dignity in him made her heart ache. "Mr. Harris?" she said softly. He turned, surprised. "Morning, Miss Emily," her throat tightened. "Please, don't call me that," she said quickly. "Just Emily." He gave a small nod, a knowing smile tugging at his lips. "All right then, Emily." She handed him the paper bag. "I brought you breakfast," she said quietly. "It's not much, but I wanted to say thank you. And I'm sorry for everything I said yesterday, for the way I treated you." Mr. Harris took the bag, his eyes gentle but unreadable. "Thank you," he said after a pause. "But you don't owe me anything." "I do," she insisted. "I was awful to you. I embarrassed you in front of everyone. You didn't deserve that. You never did." He smiled faintly. "Life gives us moments like that to see what's really inside us. What matters is what you do after." Her voice cracked. "I don't even know who I am anymore." He rested his broom against the wall. "Then start finding out," he said softly. "The real you isn't the one wearing fancy shoes. It's the one who used to bring flowers to a tired man just to make him smile." Emily blinked away tears. The simplicity in his words hit her harder than any lecture ever could. There was no anger in his tone, just quiet truth. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The only sound was the faint echo of students arriving in the distance. Then, slowly, she smiled. A small, trembling smile that felt like sunlight breaking through clouds. "Do you still like dandelions?" she asked. He chuckled softly, eyes twinkling. "Always did." And just like that, something inside her began to heal. The wall between who she was and who she'd become started to crack. Not with guilt, but with hope. By lunchtime, the whole school had heard about what happened in the hallway. Some said Emily yelled so loud the janitor quit. Others said he yelled back, which of course wasn't true. But rumors, like wildfire, never cared for truth. When Emily entered the cafeteria, conversations dropped to whispers. Her friends waved her over to their usual table. The popular one. All laughter, lip gloss, and loud music. But something inside her hesitated. She could still see Mr. Harris's tired eyes in her mind, still hear his words. "The real you isn't the one wearing fancy shoes." She sat down quietly. Madison, her best friend, or maybe her loudest one, leaned in. "Girl, you seriously destroyed that janitor yesterday." "That was iconic." Emily forced a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Yeah, iconic," she murmured, staring at her tray. Madison laughed. "Did you see how he just stood there? I swear, he looked like he was about to cry. What a loser!" Something in Emily snapped, not in anger, but in guilt. Her fork froze midair. "He's not a loser," she said quietly. Madison blinked. "What?" I said he's not a loser, Emily repeated, her tone firmer now. He's actually a really good man. The table went silent. The other girls exchanged confused looks. Madison raised a brow. You're kidding, right? He mops floors. Emily met her gaze, really met it. Yeah, floors that you walk on. Maybe that's worth some respect. It was the first time in a long while that Emily felt her words shake something real. Her friends just stared, unsure what to say. Madison rolled her eyes, muttering, Wow, someone's feeling deep today. Emily pushed her tray away. Maybe you should try it sometime. Then she stood up, her heart pounding, and walked out, not caring that half the cafeteria was watching. She headed straight for the school garden, where the wind carried the scent of wet earth and grass. For a long moment she just breathed, and then, kneeling near the fence, she saw them, tiny yellow dandelions pushing up through cracks in the dirt. She smiled faintly, tears welling again. The memory was so vivid it almost hurt. For good luck, Mr. Harris, her little voice echoing from years ago. She plucked one gently and whispered to herself, I used to be someone kind. That evening, instead of going home right away, Emily stayed after school. When the halls were quiet, she walked to the supply closet and found Mr. Harris again, stacking mops and wiping shelves. He looked surprised. You're still here? She nodded. I want to help, he chuckled. Help? With cleaning? She met his eyes, steady now. Yes, if you'll let me. For a second, he said nothing. Then, slowly, he handed her a broom. All right, then, he said softly. Let's see if Emmylou still remembers how to do real work. And for the first time in her life, Emily smiled. Not for attention, not for approval, but because something inside her finally felt right. The broom felt heavy in her hands, but her heart felt lighter than it had in years. The next morning, Emily arrived at school earlier than she ever had before. The sun was barely up, casting a soft gold light over the courtyard. The janitor's cart squeaked in the distance, that same steady rhythm she once mocked. But today, she didn't walk past it. She walked toward it. Morning, Mr. Harris, she said with a small smile. He turned, eyebrows raised slightly. Morning, Emmylou. You're early, she laughed softly. Guess I wanted to get a head start. Without waiting for an answer, she grabbed a rag and started wiping down the hallway lockers. The metal was cold, the smell of cleaning spray sharp in her nose. At first, it felt strange, her manicured hands doing something they weren't used to. But after a few minutes, it felt good, real. Mr. Harris said nothing, just watched quietly for a while. Finally, he spoke. Most kids your age would rather walk past a mess than clean it. I've done enough walking past, she said simply. He smiled, that same proud, fatherly smile that once made her feel safe. By the time students started pouring in, Emily's blazer sleeves were rolled up and her hair was tied back. Some kids stared. Others whispered. A few laughed. Madison even pulled out her phone to record. Look, everyone. Emily the janitor, she said with a smirk. For a second, Emily froze. The old her would have snapped back. But not today. She turned calmly and said, If helping someone makes me a janitor, then I'm proud of it. The laughter died. Madison rolled her eyes, muttered something under her breath, and walked away. But others didn't. A few students looked thoughtful. One boy even picked up a trash can that had tipped over. Small ripples. Quiet changes. Later that day, while Emily was sweeping near the library, the principal walked by. He stopped, surprised. Miss Carter, what on earth are you doing? She stood straight, broom in hand, and said softly, Learning something I should have learned a long time ago, sir. Mr. Harris stood beside her, silent but proud. The principal nodded slowly, then smiled. Carry on, then. When he left, Emily turned to Mr. Harris. You know, I used to think people respected me because of my family's money. But now I see. Real respect has nothing to do with that. He nodded. Money can open doors, but kindness opens hearts. That night, after her shift of helping was done, Emily walked home with a quiet satisfaction she hadn't felt in years. Her hands smelled like soap, her shoes were scuffed, but her heart was clean. Before leaving, she placed something small on Mr. Harris's cart, a single yellow dandelion wrapped in tissue. A note beneath it read, "For good luck." From Emmy Lou. When he found it later, he just smiled. A deep, proud smile that reached his tired eyes, and for the first time since she was little, he whispered, "That's my girl." A week passed, and the school buzzed with whispers about Emily Carter, the girl who once yelled at the janitor and was now cleaning hallways beside him. At first, everyone thought it was a prank or punishment, but when they realized she kept doing it, every morning, every lunch break, the laughter faded into quiet curiosity. Something had changed. Not just in Emily, but in the way people looked at her. Teachers started nodding at her in the halls. Some of the younger students began holding doors open or picking up trash they'd usually ignore. Even Madison, who had mocked her every day since that moment, had grown strangely quiet. Still, Emily didn't do it for attention. She didn't need applause. She cleaned quietly, talked softly, smiled genuinely. She was learning the value of humility, not the kind that bows down, but the kind that rises up after realizing what really matters. One morning, the principal made an announcement over the loudspeaker. "Students and staff, please gather in the auditorium. There's something important we need to discuss." The room filled with chatter as everyone filed in. Emily sat near the back, her head down, not knowing what was happening. Mr. Harris stood at the side of the stage, as he often did before assemblies, making sure the mics worked and the floor was spotless. The principal walked up to the podium, his glasses catching the light. "Before we begin today's announcements," he said, "I want to acknowledge an act of true courage and humility that has taken place in our school this week." The room went quiet. He looked toward Emily. "Miss Carter, would you please come up here?" Her heart dropped. A low murmur spread through the crowd. Madison smirked. Oh, looks like trouble again," she whispered. Emily walked slowly to the stage, her palms sweating. She had no idea what to expect. The principal gestured to her. "This young lady made a mistake, one witnessed by many. But what's remarkable is not the mistake itself, but what she chose to do afterward." He paused, scanning the room. Instead of hiding, she apologized. Instead of making excuses, she made amends. And instead of turning away from humility, she embraced it. The students were silent now, their eyes fixed on Emily. The principal smiled gently. True character isn't about being perfect. It's about how you change when you realize you're not. He turned toward Mr. Harris, who was still standing quietly near the curtains. "Mr. Harris," he said, "would you join us, please?" The old man looked surprised but stepped forward. His shoes squeaked softly on the polished stage floor. When he reached her, Emily turned to him and whispered, "I didn't know they were going to do this." He smiled faintly. "I know," the principal continued. "Mr. Harris has served this school for 23 years. Most of you have never stopped to notice the man who makes your hallways shine, who fixes the things you break, who works before you arrive and after you leave. Today, that changes," applause broke out. "Not polite, but real, the kind that comes from hearts that suddenly see." Emily felt her throat tighten as tears filled her eyes. She turned to Mr. Harris and said softly into the microphone, "I once yelled at this man. I disrespected him. But I didn't know I was yelling at someone who had once cared for me, looked after me, and believed in me when I was little. I forgot where I came from, but he didn't." The auditorium went still. Every word she spoke carried weight, the kind that sinks into people's souls. "I'm sorry," she said, her voice trembling. "And I just want to thank you, Mr. Harris. Not for forgiving me, but for reminding me what kindness really looks like." For a long moment, no one spoke. Then Mr. Harris put a gentle hand on her shoulder. "You were always kind, Emmylou," he said softly into the mic. "You just had to remember." The crowd erupted. Applause thundered through the auditorium. Some students even stood. Teachers smiled through tears, and in that single, unforgettable moment, under the soft light of the stage, The arrogant girl and the humble janitor became symbols of something bigger than a school lesson. They became a story, one that everyone in that room would remember for the rest of their lives. Years passed. The school changed. New students, new teachers, new faces. But one story never faded. The story of the girl who yelled at the janitor, and the janitor who changed her life. Emily Carter was no longer that girl. She had grown into a young woman with a gentler voice, humbler eyes, and a deeper soul. After graduating, she went to college. Not the Ivy League her father dreamed of, but a local university where she studied education. Her friends didn't understand it. "You could have gone anywhere," they said. But Emily only smiled. "I don't want to go anywhere. I want to go somewhere I can make a difference." And she did. 5 years later, Emily walked through the doors of her old high school again. But this time, not as a student. She was the new English teacher. The walls looked smaller now, the lockers less intimidating. But the memories, they came flooding back. She found herself glancing at the corner of the hallway, the one where she'd once screamed those awful words. "Do you even know who my father is?" She closed her eyes, took a deep breath, and whispered, "I know who I am now." After her first week of teaching, she walked down to the maintenance wing, the place that had once been her mirror of shame and redemption. The door was still there, marked Maintenance, Mr. Harris. But when she knocked, a different man answered. Younger, new, polite. "Oh," Emily said softly. "Is Mr. Harris around?" The man shook his head. "He retired last spring, moved to a quiet town outside the city. He comes by sometimes, though, checks in on us." Emily smiled sadly. "Thank you." That weekend, she took a bus 2 towns over and found the little house with the blue porch surrounded by a small garden full of dandelions. She stood at the gate for a long moment before walking up and knocking gently. The door opened. There he was, older now, slower, but that same warmth lived in his eyes. "Well," he said with a grin, "if it isn't my Emmy Lou." She laughed through her tears. "You remember me." "Forget the kid who gave me luck every morning?" he said. "Never." They sat together on the porch for hours, talking about life, about her teaching, about how the world can be cruel but still beautiful. She told him how she shared his story, their story, with her students, not as a lesson in shame, but as one in forgiveness. When it was time to leave, she reached into her bag and pulled out a small frame. Inside it was a photo, the one from his maintenance room, little Emmy Lou holding dandelions beside him. She'd cleaned it, polished it, and written underneath in neat handwriting, "The man who taught me more than any classroom ever could." He looked at it for a long time, his lips trembling slightly. "You didn't have to do this," she smiled through her tears. "I wanted to, because I finally understand what you meant that day." He tilted his head. "What did I say?" She took a deep breath, remembering every word. "You grew up, Emmy Lou, but not all growth is good if it makes you forget who you were." He smiled softly. "And did you find her again?" Emily nodded, eyes glistening. "Yes, and she's still picking dandelions." They laughed quietly, and for a moment, time seemed to stop. 2 souls connected by forgiveness, respect, and the kind of love that doesn't need words. When Emily left that afternoon, the wind blew gently across the field, carrying yellow petals through the air. She looked back once more, watching Mr. Harris wave from the porch. In her heart, she whispered, "Thank you for not giving up on me." As she walked away, the camera of life would have panned wide, showing the road ahead, the sunlight cutting through clouds, and a single dandelion floating in the breeze. And the voice of the storyteller, gentle, steady, would say, "Sometimes the people we look down on are the ones who lift us higher than we ever imagined. Respect has no uniform, kindness needs no title, and the smallest act of humility can rewrite a life forever."